know it. That's how they market themselves.
For all our family's vacations.
I could pay for my wedding just on what I've made from Poshmark.
Poshmark said their users as of June were double what they had been in 2018. Shoppers on secondhand online marketplaces were already growing, says Trini Ahmed with the Yale Center for Customer Insights. And now they're there buying everything from salt and pepper shakers to designer shoes.
Given the economic conditions, but buying them secondhand, it's almost like it gives you a little bit of a permission to buy something new for you, but it feels less wasteful.
These sites are increasingly popular among millennials and Gen Zers. Neil Saunders, a retail analyst with Global Data, says that's because with all the interaction, they aren't just marketplaces.
They are, in a way, a hybrid between a traditional retail site and a social media site, especially a peer-to-peer platform like Poshmark.
And like social media sites, there's that pull that keeps people checking back in. I'm Erica Barris for Marketplace.
5 words, people. David Brancaccio, Marketplace Morning Report. Check it out. Wait, that's 8 words. Sorry. Coming up.
I have not learned how to make bread from scratch.
There is still time, but first, let's do the numbers. Dow Industrial's down 68 points today, 0.2%, 30,991. NASDAQ shaved off about 16 points, a 10%, 13,112. The S&P 500 down 14, about 0.3%, 37,095. Mentioned unemployment insurance claims out this morning. That weekly report also looks at how states are faring in terms of what percentage of their labor force is getting unemployment insurance. Department of Labor says the states with the highest rates, Pennsylvania, Alaska, and Kansas are the top 3. Erica Barris talked about Poshmark going public. So, some other secondhand and consignment goods people, or companies, I suppose, because they're not people. eBay auctioned off 0.7%. The Real found 6.4%. You're listening to Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by C3.ai. C3.ai software enables organizations to use artificial intelligence at enterprise scale, solving previously unsolvable business problems. Learn more at C3.ai. And by Merrill. Merrill Edge Self-Directed Investing has tools to help clients find answers to questions. More at merrilledge.com/withinreach. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, registered broker-dealer. And by Constant Contact with email marketing, websites, online stores, and other resources. Committed to helping small businesses and nonprofits stay connected and do more business online. Learn more at ConstantContact.com.
Support for WNYC comes from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, dedicated to promoting informed and engaged communities and committed to helping public radio advance quality journalism in the digital age. More at knightfoundation.org.
On the next Brian Lehrer Show, it's our Friday Ask the Mayor call-in. My questions and yours for Mayor Bill de Blasio on Attorney General Letitia James suing the NYPD over its behavior during protests, the end of the gifted and talented exam for 4-year-olds, and whatever you call in with. Also, how back to normal can you go after you get your COVID vaccine? The Brian Lehrer Show at 10 a.m. on WNYC.
You're listening to Marketplace on WNYC. Stay with us in the 7 o'clock hour of All Things Considered. Tonight, President-elect Joe Biden is set to unveil his plans for a coronavirus relief package. We'll hear all about it and more at 7 on WNYC. Stay tuned.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Rizdal. These weeks that we are living in right now, I mean, the whole last year or so, of course, but the past couple of weeks especially, people are going to remember them for a long, long time.
This moment is absolutely historic.
I mean, it's just so surreal, all of this, to be stuck at home in a pandemic and have sedition at our doorstep.
And it's quite shocking.
You remember our economic historians, right? That was Eric Hilt at Wellesley, Kathleen Day at Johns Hopkins, and Carola Friedman at Northwestern. We called them up the first time back in March so they could help us put what we are living through into some context.
There has been a lesson learned from the Great Depression.
The reason that the Great Depression was the Great Depression was that the financial system essentially melted down. And for the most part, the Fed did very little to try to stop that.
Banks by the hundreds, by the thousands are forced to close.
This time, it's obviously not man-made. It's a virus.
I think it's going to be a very bad crisis in relative terms.
We talked to him a couple of times in the spring and summer.
I'm growing increasingly pessimistic.
I think it is as bad as I possibly imagined, possibly worse.
Not that much has changed since the last time we talked 2 months ago. It's still a big question mark and a lot of uncertainty.
Honestly, I feel like I've done nothing but the dishes over the past 8 weeks.
I have not learned how to make bread from scratch.
So where are we now, 10 months into this thing? Well, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right.
Let me just refresh my coffee.
While Professor Day does that, let us talk about the economy.
On the one hand, there is an enormous amount of uncertainty.
As you know, the pandemic started to resurge in the fall, and the economic recovery that we were experiencing in the third quarter seems to have slowed.
Remember, the December jobs report we got this past Friday showed there are still 10 million fewer jobs in this economy than there were before the pandemic.
That's a worry.
Got my coffee.
Excellent.
There's also this phenomenon where people are saving more because people are worried.
So here's why people are worried. In the past couple of months, big companies like Disney and Boeing and Marriott have announced more layoffs and furloughs. Eviction moratoriums and jobless benefits for 12 million people were left hanging in the balance by the Congress. And 4,000 people a day have been dying from this virus.
In times of stress, people want to preserve what they have or save for a rainy day.
And firms do the same. When there is uncertainty, firms have an incentive not to invest, not to hire, not to start new projects, because they don't know what's going to happen.
But I think there's good reason to be optimistic about the longer term.
Oh, really?
Scientists.
A vaccine has been
vaccine
developed
in the offing
and
that
tested
is
and is
rolling
now
out.
being distributed.
That is heartening.
Particularly if the problems associated with distribution get resolved.
The CDC says that as of Tuesday, 10 million people in this economy had gotten their first shot. And not for nothing.
We have a new set of people coming in who, whether you agree with them politically or not, most people are rallying around them as finally we're getting some adults back in the room.
And from my perspective, most importantly, the president-elect and the Fed have indicated that they do not want to repeat the mistakes that were made after 2008.
We've talked about 2008, right? Congress and the Obama administration cut back on stimulus before the recovery was far enough along, and it wound up being the slowest recovery on record. There are some parallels between then and now. A new president taking over in the middle of an economic crisis. And then, of course,
we're seeing protesters overcome the police. The police are now running back into the Capitol building. We have
rattling of the foundation of our society.
You know, with regard to the attack on Congress,
we have often lost sight of the fact that our biggest and most successful export is not capitalism, but is democracy.
I don't think it ever realistically had a chance of succeeding, in the sense that I don't think there was any realistic outcome that would have led to Trump continuing as president for another term. That doesn't mean that it's not harmful to the economy in a long run sense.
I've said it before, and I will say it again. This economy and this democracy only work if we believe together.
I grew up in Argentina, and this is the country that I look up to in terms of the separation of powers and the strength of institutions. And I think that one insight that you get from growing in a much less stable country is that institutions are extremely hard to build and extremely easy to destroy.
If we can't trust our political institutions, if the threat of violence is ever present, if democratic legitimacy comes under threat, I think it's likely that economic policymaking will not be able to function.
Restoration of a trust in democracy and a effective response to the pandemic are key. If without those two things, the economy is ultimately, I can't say screwed. Can I?
Yeah, sure you can.
Without those two things, the economy is screwed.
Thanks again to our panelist, Kathleen Day at Johns Hopkins, Eric Hilt at Wellesley and Carolla Friedman at Northwestern. We will get them back on the phone once a little bit more history has been written. We're just short of a year from the first lockdown of the pandemic era. January 23rd last year, most of China's economy went into hibernation. Stores and companies were closed, streets were pretty much emptied, and for months. A lot of companies, as happened here, tried to pivot to find something new they could do to capitalize on a terrible situation. Some of them could, and some of them, as Marketplace's Jennifer Pack reports, couldn't.
When China locked down last January to contain the spread of the COVID-19 virus, the strictest controls were placed on central Hubei province, where the outbreak first began, and where salesman Liu Yi lives. He says no one could go in or out of the province.
We weren't even allowed to step outside the front door.
These measures lasted for 2 months, during which Liu Yi had no income. He sells ingredients to bubble tea and fruit tea shops, which didn't get any subsidies from the Chinese government. Nor did people get cash handouts. Since he lives in an area where face masks are being made, he thought that could be a backup plan.
I partnered with a couple of friends to open a factory making melt-blown fabric.
Melt-blown fabric is the crucial layer in medical masks that filters out infectious particles, and it's a bit hard to make, which is also why there aren't enough top-grade masks, the N95s, to go around this pandemic. So Liu Yi hired workers and bought a machine.
I thought I could recover the costs within a year without a problem. I knew the high profit margins wouldn't last long.
But for weeks, the machine would barely run. Further east in Anhui province, Qian Wensheng retooled his brush factory to make face masks, but he was having problems with the same machine.
The machine could not produce melt-blown fabric with a 90% filtration rate, let alone 95% as the manufacturer promised. The thickness was uneven, and there were even small holes in the fabric.
We reached out to the machine manufacturer Demark for comment. The company didn't respond, but its general manager told local media that the firm has never promised its machine would make melt-blown fabric suitable for N95 masks. He admitted there have been some problems with a few machines. But many customers showed up at the company's doorstep to complain, including Qian Wensheng.
Hundreds of people had the same experience as me. It was a trap by Demark through and through. This is a company of fraudsters.
Meanwhile, by June, thousands of other companies were making face masks, flooding the market, including automakers, an oil producer, air conditioner, and cell phone manufacturers. The price of face masks started to drop. Again, Qian Wensheng.
At its height, top medical-grade masks like KN95, China's version of N95s, were sold at 90 cents a piece. Now it's less than a dime a piece, so we've stopped producing masks.
He and others are trying to sue the machine company for a refund, but he's having trouble getting his case heard by the courts. When we reached out to other machine buyers, one of them told us he was contacted by the police.
The officer said, don't accept media interviews. This is a business dispute. Why are the police interfering? What does it have to do with them?
As for Liu Yi, he spent his life savings and is now over $60,000 in debt. He owes money to the bank, his family, and friends, and may lose his apartment. Why did he take this chance?
Chinese people are very good at learning new skills. We have passion in our hearts.
Liu Yi doesn't regret taking a gamble during the pandemic. He just wishes he bought the machine from the right company. In Shanghai, I'm Jennifer Pack for Marketplace.
This final note on the way out today, just because we could all probably use a laugh, with a little brand identity thrown in. This correction today from CNN on a story about the attack on the Capitol last week. Here it is. It's a quote. A previous version of this story misstated that Representative Ted Lieu grabbed a crowbar before leaving his office. He grabbed a Pro Bar energy bar. Pretty good, right?
Marketplace is supported by Cabot Creamery, a farm family cooperative since 1919, crafting traditional cheddar cheese, offering comfort recipes and educational resources at cabotcheese.coop. And by NetSuite, helping businesses get control over financials, HR, inventory, and more. Over 24,000 companies use NetSuite by Oracle. Product tours at netsuite.com/publicradio.
All right, we are going, but here is your Thursday moment of economic context, circling back in a way to where we started today, that whole 1 step forward, 3-4 steps back thing. American consumers, who I believe we have told you a time or two are the whole ball game in this economy, ain't having it no more. Bloomberg puts out what it calls a consumer comfort index every month, how we're all feeling about things. Came out this morning, 8th straight monthly decline. Amir Babawe, Siobhan Brett, John Buckley, Eve Epstein, John Gordon, Kat Green, Rick Carr, and Betsy Streisand are the Marketplace editing staff. I'm Kai Rizdal. We will see you tomorrow, everybody. This is APM.